Okay, you guys are good.
All right. Chairman Burkett, would you like to talk us through the agenda?
We're going to call this meeting to order of the Public Safety Committee. I'd like to first ask for the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you mind standing? Now, do we have a flag available to show?
The city flag's up in the corner.
Up in the corner. There it is. Yeah, wherever it is. Yeah. Ready? I pledge allegiance
Flag.
To the flag of the United States of America.
and to the
Of the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
nation, under God, indivisible,
With liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
All right. Adam, will you do the roll call for us, please?
Sir. Chairman Burkett,
Here.
Vice Chair Ganis,
Here.
Committee Member Walsh,
Here.
and Committee Member Leffler.
Here.
Full house. Okay.
I will do the roll call for our non-voting members as well, just to document who is here. Lieutenant Manhart and Chief Capobianco are not present currently. I have spoken to them earlier, and they said that they would be running late, so when they arrive, we'll have the meeting minutes reflect their time of arrival.
Yes, thank you. Well, let's see. We have special orders of business and special presentations. For the record, Adam, will you tell us about the marine safety agenda item that is not going to happen right now?
Yes, thank you, Chair Burkett. So I've spoken with the interim Marine Safety Chief, Rod Malott, and he is currently monitoring the beach due to some staffing issues. Is not available to meet us today, so he will. So he recommended that we push this item to the next meeting's agenda, and if that's acceptable to the committee, I request a motion, a second, and then I'll do a roll call vote for that.
Okay. Anyone make a motion?
I'll make a motion to move the marine safety presentation to the next Public Safety Committee meeting.
Great.
I'll
Second.
Moved in second. Let's all in favor. We have to do a roll call.
Yes, I'll take care of the roll call, unless you would like to do so.
Go ahead, Adam. Yeah.
Okay. Chair Burkett,
Aye.
Vice Chair Ganis,
Aye.
Committee Member Leffler,
Aye.
and Committee Member Walsh.
Aye.
Okay, that passes 4-0. So I will have that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Thank you. Next item, number 6, is oral and written communications. Do we have anything to?
Chairman, my apologies. There's item 5 is the meeting minutes from the September 9th meeting.
Yes. I think I did that last time. Okay.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented from the September 9th, 2020 Public Safety Committee meeting.
Seconded.
We'll call the roll on this. Adam?
Chairman Burkett,
Aye.
Vice Chair Ganis,
Aye.
Committee Member Leffler,
Aye.
and Committee Member Walsh.
Aye.
Great.
Passes 4-0. Chairman?
Go ahead and call the order here since I screwed it up already today. Go ahead, Adam. For item 6.
Okay. Members of the public who wish to provide comments to the Public Safety Committee on matters that are within the jurisdiction of the City of San Clemente, but not separately listed on the agenda, may email their comments to atamiana@san-clemente.org. That is ATAMIANA at san-clemente.org for reading during the oral communications portion of the agenda. Transmittal by the beginning of the meeting time is recommended on the days that the Public Safety Committee meets. And emails will be read publicly at the meeting up to the allotted time limit of 3 minutes per person. I have not received any communications from the public expressing a desire to have their comments read during the oral or and written communications section.
Okay. Do we go to the next agenda item?
Okay, so the next item is the consideration of recommendation to alter the committee composition. This was an item that the committee had requested to be placed on this meeting agenda related to the potential addition of a non-voting seat on the committee by a representative of the Marine Safety Division. This was in unison with the presentation, but there were two distinct items for the committee's consideration. So unless the committee would prefer to move this to another meeting, the committee can go ahead and discuss this item and consider it now.
How about would it be good with a motion to approve this before we start making the discussion?
I think we need the discussion first. If anybody has discussion, I think we should just pass it unless anybody should jump in. I think having the more public safety entities involved in our committee, the better. So that's my feeling.
That's good. Good.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it'd be a great addition because marine safety is one whole side of this community, and it's a major area that normally doesn't get a lot of attention, and it probably needs to at least get publicized a little bit to the people that don't know what's going on at the beach. That'd be good. So
I move that we table this till the next public safety meeting, along with the presentation of Marine Safety Interim Chief.
And is there a second?
I just have a question, Joe. Are you thinking that maybe because during his presentation he might not want to be a part of this?
No, I just think that that was the way we were going to do it last time. We were going to start with hearing what he had to say and then vote on it. I would definitely say yes, I'm going to vote on it. But that's how we had it started the last time, and I'm not sure we need to do it now or just wait. It doesn't matter to me either way, though.
Let me ask Adam a quick question, because that won't have any effect one way or another when you submit the work plan to the city council, will it? Or will it?
It won't. It's really up to the committee how they would like to proceed with this. If the committee today decides that they would like to submit a request to the city council for an additional seat, the timing of that approval today would coincide with the annual work plan being submitted to the council for their October 20th meeting. And so that could be part of that package. However, if it's tabled for another month, then that request would simply be sent to the council at whatever meeting date would be next convenient for staff to get on the agenda.
Okay, with that in mind, Joe, I know that like the November 3rd or whatever that week is, council meeting is canceled. So we're going another 2 weeks. And I just think, as opposed to drawing it out, I'd actually like to vote on it today. If something happens and they decide they don't want to participate or there's a problem, that's fine. But I'd like it if we can possibly get as much into the city council as possible, because I think that would be very impressive to the council if they were included. That's my only thoughts.
I like that. Yeah.
Okay, on the original motion, do we need to alter that, or just having it die of a second, and then we go into actual recommendation to the city council to include the marine safety component?
I'll second the original motion to pass that we include marine safety in our ad hoc committee.
Okay, well, the original motion, as I understand it, was to table it until the next meeting.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Never mind. Then, Joe, would you like to amend your amendment or amend your motion?
Can I withdraw it and make it? Is that how you do that?
Yeah.
That's one. Yeah, that's one way to do it. Or you could just amend it to
What's cleaner for you, Adam? What's cleaner for you? You've got to do the minutes on this stuff.
You know what? Let's just withdraw that motion, and then somebody can, or you, or committee, Janice can submit a new motion.
Okay, Joe, do you want to make that motion again?
Okay, I move that we recommend to the city council to add an additional non-voting seat for the representative from the city's Marine Safety Division.
And just for clarification, are you withdrawing your original motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'll second Joe's second motion.
Good. You get it down here. It's really good. Okay. Any other discussion, or we go right to the vote? Mr. Adam, will you help us out with that?
Yes, sir. Okay. Chairman Bercuda.
Aye.
Vice Chair Janice.
Aye.
Committee Member Leffler.
Aye.
And Committee Member Walsh.
Aye.
Okay, that passes 4-0. I will, at this point, let the committee know that I skipped item 7 under reviews and recommendations on the agenda. And I should have announced that, but I did that for the purposes of allowing a bit more time for our other committee members to arrive. And I noticed that we just got Fire Chief Capobianco with us. I assume that Chief Manhart is not far behind. At this point, though, the next item on the agenda should be item 7, reviews and recommendations. If the committee is ready to move forward with that item, I'd like to do a little presentation before that begins.
Well, we could do that, and hopefully Manhart will come along. But if we start with 7B rather than 7A, if the chief is not here, the police chief is not here, that'd probably be better to, if we had questions on those measures. But I think you need to give us an introduction on these performance measures.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Bercuda, members of the Public Safety Committee. I've included with the agenda this month the performance measures that have been included in the city's budget for the last 2 years related to the Orange County Fire Authority and the city's, the Orange County Sheriff's Department, our contract public safety entities, and the city's Marine Safety Division. These are the performance measures that the city has used through our budget process on an annual basis for many years. Initially, before the first meeting of the Public Safety Committee, I had provided these numbers for the last 10 years, with the exception of the Marine Safety Division. So, in addition to these numbers, there has been some additional statistics provided by Chief Capobianco related to some of the statistics that the committee has asked for in the past. At this point, I just want to give a general overview of this the committee's charge at this point related to the review of public safety performance measures and help establish some of the context of the discussion that is possible today. So I'm going to refer to find it. I'm going to refer to the city to the committee's project for the statistical information and review aspect of the annual work plan. This is the work plan project that covers the council's charge to the committee to review performance measures and make recommendations to improve the efficiency of public safety services in the city. That work plan document has not been approved by the council yet. So at this point, the committee's review of performance measures is a bit tentative. We're very confident that this is definitely an aspect of what the committee will be doing. So at this point, it's going to be more appropriate for the committee to simply familiarize themselves with the concept of performance measures as reported by our various public safety entities. At this point, keeping in mind that some of the tenets of the goals of the work plan project, the idea is really to review the city's performance measures and make recommendations off of those. Should there be additional information that the committee wants, please keep in mind that it's going to have to be taken under consideration by staff, reviewed as a request, and analyzed as part of our existing budget. If additional staff work is necessary to provide this information, it may require us to go to council to identify the budgetary allocation for that staff time. This is something that is actually reflected in our work plan project that the council will be reviewing on October 20th. Specifically, under statistical information and review project, item number 4 states that the committee is going to review the city current performance measures regarding OCSD, OCFA, marine safety, park rangers, and code compliance. Determine if additional or alternative measures are appropriate and whether comparative benchmarks for public safety personnel performance should be revised or established to better facilitate a method of measuring their efficiency, while also providing comparative evaluations of the city's services measured against similarly situated municipalities. The 5th goal of that project is, as an ongoing component of this project, the Public Safety Committee will review quarterly performance measures submitted by the various groups that comprise the city's public safety services. The deliverable of this project is at the conclusion of the project, which we have scheduled to end around the middle of October of 2021, is to report the committee's findings with recommendations to the City Council for further action. So, as part of our work plan project, we're not identifying the specific direction to staff to develop new information beyond the city's established performance measures. So just bear that in mind as we move forward through this. I think for today's discussion, we're really talking about familiarizing the committee with the city's performance measures, becoming comfortable with what they mean and how they're determined, and looking at things like the frequency of review and things like that. So at this point, I will turn it over to the committee for discussion. I'm available to answer any questions. Chief Capobianco is here as well. And as the committee chair mentioned, it may be best to start with any questions or discussion about item B under fire services, since Lieutenant Manhart is not with us yet, but I will leave that up to the committee.
Adam, this is Rob. I'd like to interject one thing. One, sorry I'm late. the sheriff department put on a countywide training program, kind of to review our responses to civil unrest. So the county sheriff was putting that on. Ed was present at that. I was lucky enough to be invited into it to share some of the perspectives from the fire service and also work better with them. I was able to sneak out the back because a lot of it was law enforcement towards the end. I do know that Ed is still in the middle of it, and he's having trouble getting out of there. So he's trying still at this point, though. But once again, I'm sorry for being late. I'm glad I could be here.
Thank you for your attendance, and thank you for the update about Chief Manhart.
Good. Okay. Now, as far as performance measures, I'm trying to over, and I'm not sure how these numbers came to be. I'm not saying they're wrong or whatever. I says how, it's quantitative work. How are these measures, these quantitative, these numbers, how are they assembled? Do you have any idea on that, Adam?
Well, I can speak from personal experience, having worked with the performance measures of a couple divisions within the city so far. The performance measures, as city staff has worked on them, tend to come from either council input or staff recommendation to the council, as far as their self-reporting goes, and what staff may recommend as being an appropriate measure. I can tell you that looking between cities, what is reported in terms of performance measures vary greatly. It's going to be, I would say that there's very little chance you're going to find another city that reports on the exact same numbers with the exact same parameters that this city does. So they tend to be unique for each city. Now, our contract with public services, I'm not really sure exactly where those numbers or how they were established, those specific performance measures. So I think maybe the Chief Capobianco may have more information on that. The other thing to keep in mind is that over time, some of these numbers or some of these performance measures can change. I know for code compliance, we've changed some of them through the budget process over time to better reflect our changing the changing scope of our duties, to better reflect the overall amount of work that the division's doing. So they can change over time, but typically they're established as one package and maintained for a number of years, so that the data that we have is you can look over a longer period of time and find longer term trends rather than a different set of performance measures every few years.
Okay, but specifically, I'm looking at our city, not others. I don't want to compare it with anybody else, but I want to make sure that the numbers that are reported here mean something, because if we as a committee are supposed to do the qualitative analysis, meaning what do these numbers mean, I want to make sure the numbers are right to begin with. So that's where do we get the numbers from?
As far as where the actual the data points come from,
Yes.
most of this is going to be through some kind of electronic tracking program that will print out a report that is it's done the exact same way every quarter. These numbers are, and I should say, these numbers are reported to the city on a quarterly basis. They're included with the budget on a yearly basis, and they're provided in the actual budget document that's reviewed at the end of each fiscal year before the following one. So the numbers are typically come from some type of electronic tracking program. As far as what they mean, that's going to be up to the committee to interpret, but also if you have specific questions about each metric being used, that's an appropriate question to ask at this juncture. Or if we don't know the answer, provide us those questions, and the staff that oversees the provision of these performance measures can come back at a later time, and provide additional information.
Yeah, in what I did from my own analysis of the thing, something just didn't seem right. That's why I'm asking the questions regarding specific, where do we get these documents? For example, I'm comparing page 296 to 286, which is the performance measures for 2017-18 and 2018-19. And we're looking at Part 1 crimes. In 2017-18, the actuals were 14.7. And then you look over at the 2018-19, and it's 1.39. I mean, the disparity is just huge. I mean, try to make sense out of that. It's like there was a no crime at all of a sudden. Okay, so I got these figures. What does it mean without some additional information? Like, can we explain such a huge reduction?
Adam, are these numbers, are these gleaned from the crime analysts for the city that the sheriff provides us?
I can't speak directly for OCSD, but these are not numbers that the city gathered from some reporting mechanism that we're looking at OCSD for. These are numbers that OCSD provides to the city directly.
Right. That's what I'm thinking. If we have questions about this, and when Chief Manhart gets here, or if he does, I think probably he could point us in the direction. I've got to believe that since we pay for a crime analyst as part of our OCSD contract, I would imagine they would be the ones that would be involved in putting this together. And maybe at some point we should have a presentation from that person where we can ask the questions. Because I don't think anybody else from the city can do it.
I think Captain or the chief can explain that as far as the police goes, but Chief Capobianco could talk to us about fire right now and how they came up with the numbers. Chief?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me again today. So a little bit about these numbers that you were given. There's two forms. I know at our first meeting, I was asked to provide some stats. So if you look at documents that were provided, one of them is the 2019 run data for the city of San Clemente, and then there's the 2020 run data. You asked for some numbers, general numbers for the city of San Clemente, as well as broken down by each unit. So do you see that document in front of you?
Yes.
So, what that was is you have the three stations, Engine 50, Engine 60, and Truck 59. Once again, they're all paramedic units. And then you also have Engine 350 on there. That's the brush engine. As you can see, that's cross-staffed by Engine 50, so same personnel that cross-staff over onto that unit. And you can see significantly less numbers. And as you compare from year to year, obviously it's much busier in the September, October, November months. But during the winter, they don't typically run a lot of calls out there. You'll see they're broken down by the units, and then when you see the column that shows all other OCFA resources, so that's when like Engine 29 from Dana Point or some of these other units come down into the area. And if there was a great example to see how that differs. So if you look at 2019 run data, and you look at the vegetation fire, so down towards the bottom, says fire / vegetation brush. you'll see engine 350 responded to 3 times to brush fires in the city. But if you look over on the far right under the column of all other OCFA resources, it shows 155. So those are specific unit responses. So during those 3 responses that engine 350 responded in San Clemente, we obviously augmented with significant other resources, everything from helicopters to bulldozers to hand crew. So that can explain a little bit between what a unit response in the city is from those specific stations versus pulling from elsewhere in the county. It shows the total units, total OCFA responses, so that's each. So if we send a structure response, you have 4 engines and 2 trucks and a battalion chief, that's 7 units responding to that one incident versus the total number of incidents that would count, that structure fire would count as 1 incident. Any questions on those stats in those columns, or does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So in other words, if we have a structure fire in town, you're going to send 3 engines. So engine 50, 60, and truck 59 will go to that. And that's only 1 incident, but you're going to have 3 response units on that.
Correct.
And that's what the number. And that's why we have OCFA responses and total incidents differ in those numbers.
That's correct, and that's why the OCFA responses, that's the individual units, that's why that is higher than the actual number of incidents.
Okay. And so I didn't print out the 2019. I guess I didn't see it, but I got the 2020 here, and that's for 8 months of the year. So I kind of did some calculations, and it looked like engine 50 at the Los Mars station, they average a little under 5 alarms a day. Engine 60 does about 7, and the truck company does maybe 4.5 or something. Does that sound about right to you?
I haven't run those numbers. It doesn't sound too far off. And there are, once again, for 2020, there is a seasonal influx with some of those units, but I don't think your numbers are far off, but I have not run that.
Okay, I'll check the 2020, 2019. I just didn't see that one. So, and also then I had on the responses, response times, it says the average is around 7 minutes or something like that. I think it said, 7.09, 7.24, or what have you. Is that the time just for the response, or does that include the time the person calls dispatch gets the information, responds to dispatches the unit, and the time they arrive on scene? Or is that just their response time from when they get the dispatch?
So let me explain a little bit how we calculate that. And I can talk to this other sheet a little more specifically. So at this point, what has been a accepted response time for OCFA, what we do is we do a 60 seconds for dispatch. Then we do a minute 20 for our turnout time. And then we do a travel time we shoot for 5 minutes as we look at the location of our fire stations. We look at traffic, we look at hills, how long it takes the truck to get up Vista Hermosa versus down Vista Hermosa. So that overall guideline that we shoot for or expectation is 7 minutes and 20 seconds. That's what we use. Now a little bit of history or I guess moving forward. We just finished there's a consultant called Citygate. They come into fire departments as a private consultant and take a look at different aspects of the fire departments. We've had them come in. We started with 5 different areas. Our fire chief has the opinion that he would like to pull back the curtain. Let's take a look at what's working, what's not, and truly identify where we're at. So Citygate has come in. They actually just finished a study, and at our last board meeting, they presented it to our board. It was to accept it only. No action has been taken. But what might come out of it is quite a few recommendations. Some very costly, some a change in philosophy, some a change in policy. As of this point, nothing has been acted on it. With that, everything from our EMS section, emergency medical services, our dispatch was completely reviewed, our fleet services section was completely reviewed, and the big one, and why I'm bringing it up, our the field deployment or standards of coverage was just was reviewed. There were some recommendations made of that. That is a public document. I don't want to get too much into it now, but it's a Citygate. It should be a public document available. And they're looking at our standards of coverage. They look at, it was interesting. They did a lot of maps based on low traffic time versus heavy traffic. For instance, South San Clemente on a Sunday afternoon, trying to get down to South San Clemente from Dana Point, it takes a lot longer than at 2 in the morning on Monday night. So they looked at a whole bunch of stuff. All I can say is that there will be some discussions at our board of directors level, which is Council Member Ward is the same representative on there. There will be some evaluations on philosophy and policy and some direction given to staff on where we can go. There were some staffing changes recommended, so it's so early in the game. I don't know where that's going to be going. Our standard response time of 7 minutes and 20 seconds was discussed by that Citygate study, and to see if that 60-second turnout, if that 5-minute response time, and how that varies between urban and rural. There was a lot of discussion on that, and we'll kind of see where things go. But what was approved years ago was 7 minutes, 20 seconds. If you look on those performance measures, just so you can kind of understand where we're at, we've always measured our performance two ways. One is an average. So you take the response time, you add them all up, and you divide it by the number of responses, and there you get your average. So looking at the sheet that was provided to you, something that the city uses for their projection and their budgeting versus what we use, we've typically, and everything I've ever done has been using actual numbers. So what I always look at is that really two columns on that. There's the 2017-18 actual, and then there's the 2018-19 actual. Those are actual numbers versus projected is trying to guess at what the next quarter is going to be like. These documents that were provided to you are the way that we've been doing it well before I came down into San Clemente. It's a quarterly performance review that gets put together and sent down to the city of San Clemente so that they can kind of see an eye as to what we're doing for some standard measures. That I'm going to talk about at first are the response times. So if you look on those first two columns, the actual columns, it will show on there that there's a response. The average response time is 7:12 in 2017-18, and the average response time is in 2018-19 was 7:09. The columns to the right are projections. So to me, the actual numbers are really what I put the weight in. Below that, you'll see effectiveness. You'll see a percentage of calls. So the other thing we do to look deeper into how our service is being provided and what Citygate also looked into is we shoot for 720. The approved standard that we've been using for the last, say, 10 years is 7 minutes and 20 seconds, 80% of the time. So that should account for times when you have multiple calls in the city, a brush fire going, and a medical aid comes in after that, and resources are thin. So if you look at those numbers, you'll see it's a 57.9 and a 64.0. Those are we call it the fractile or percentage of time that we're meeting 720. So that explains what those numbers are. The caveat to those, this has been a standard document that has been kind of generated and sent out as you work together and work with city staff on if you want to see things presented in a different format. Also, if our board decides to update our standards of coverage and the way that we respond and calculate our success, there's some room to take a look at some of this. This form is literally generated blindly by a computer that takes into account every call we go on. There's been another thought process on how we calculate these to separate the core calls. The significant medical calls, the fires, the traffic accidents, and maybe not include the chirping smoke alarm at 2 a.m, where it's a slower get out time. A back to bed, there's different ways to calculate these. These are just generated basically every call that goes in, every call, every service call, every lower level call that we get. We blindly just take these and throw the numbers out so that we can kind of see where things line up. As you can see, the average, we're below that 720, and then if you look at the percentage of calls, it calculates a little bit differently. Hopefully that kind of explains our numbers. The other big service that we provide to the city is our annual fire inspections, not only done at the company level, but by our community risk reduction section. It used to be called fire prevention, now it's community risk reduction. And then the plans checking, so new construction, remodels, that type of thing. And the way that we calculate those services is the length of time it takes to turn around a plan or success in getting inspections done on an annual basis. I hope that kind of explains these forms a little bit more. And let me know if you have any other questions.
Yeah, I have one more. You mentioned 720, 80% of the time. Is that what you say you're doing now, or are we doing an average right now?
Well, there's two different ways of doing it, right? Our goal is 720.
80% of the
to measure
time?
that and to calculate success, and that would be what we shoot for is at 720, 80% of the time. That would be one way of calculating it. Like I said, with this new Citygate report that came out, I think we're probably going to be seeing some change with that to figure out. And once again, it's truly a way to gauge how well we're doing out there, where there's a need to. Are the fire stations in the right place? Are fire stations being built the right way? Does a two-story fire station slow down get-out time? What effect has COVID had, right? Because COVID has changed the way that we live in fire stations. They've changed even as cancer awareness has come in. Wearing turnouts inside of a fire station doesn't happen anymore. Now with COVID, wearing your boots inside of a fire station, we don't do that anymore. So a lot of these changes have come in and trying to bring in some engineering, some different philosophies on how we can address that. I think that's what we're going to see over the next couple of years to see how we can continue to improve.
Okay, my question was though, so what we have is the average, not the 80%. You might shoot for the 80%, but the figures we have is average, correct?
Correct. Well, you have both. You have both. You have your average, which say for 2017, 2018, your average is 7 minutes and 12 seconds.
Right.
Your percentile is 57.9% of the time.
Okay, so we're not doing the 80%.
Correct.
So down the road, we might change that, as you said. Okay.
A little bit. Yes,
Okay.
correct.
And then the last question, do you track the hours that they spend on alarms, like the average hour that an engine company is tie up on an alarm? Do you guys ever track that?
We have the ability to track it. I can't say that I look at that all the time. One time that we do track that, a lot with the automatic aid agreements that we have with neighboring cities. We have reports that come out to track literally how many hours we've spent on their calls and how many hours they spend on our calls, just so we can kind of make sure that we're close in sharing resources. So that is something that's tracked, but I have not been tracking it in the city of San Clemente.
All right. Good presentation. Thank you.
Sure.
Chief, I have a question.
Yes.
In your role at management, is there something else that is either missing or should be in these performance measures that we don't see that should be there?
I think there's different avenues that we can continue to look. You know, I know that there was there's still a thought to see the effect of the lack of the hospital on fire resources. So it really depends to me on specifically what you're looking for. There are different There are different avenues you can take, different measures that you can look at depending, I guess, on what our concern is, if that makes sense. To me,
Yeah.
the thing, and when it comes to the fire department, the very easy, measurable metric is response times.
Okay.
And then you got to start, I think, in San Clemente, depending on how we look at things, what's the effect on the geography of San Clemente being kind of at a cul-de-sac, right? Not a lot of help coming from the south. There's some, but nothing from the east, nothing from the west. So what is the effect on a second call in a fire station's first due area? How often does that happen? So there are some other things that you could probably look at and really paint a strong picture.
Right. Well, what I'm looking for is I'm looking at the raw data here, and then I've got averages. But what does it mean? I've got to make some basic assumptions on my own, which could be fallacious. I mean, what I think we're looking at is driving into that is what causes these, say, percentage of calls with the response time within 7 minutes is 57.9. Well, what are the causes for not being at 100%? I mean, there's staffing, there's distance, location, all sorts of stuff. So, I don't want the city council saying to me, it says, okay, Nick, what does this mean? And I've got to be able to, have an intelligent analysis of this stuff too. So that's something else we can do in the future. But that's my first take on this stuff. I just want to know, how do I explain this stuff? I just need a little bit more myself. But and these performance measures on these papers are very brief, and I think they're designed to be that way. And if there's any questions, we know where to go to get the answers, which is you, obviously. And
Chief, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Not being a fire person, so I'm listening to all your firemen talk and gaining some knowledge. But the figures that you've given, as far as 80% of the time or however percentage of the time you do it within 7 minutes or whatever, do you ever compare that to, say, another city that's similar to ours in size and in calls? I mean, do we know how we compare to other, like, say, Carlsbad Fire Department or, somebody, or, even bigger, Long Beach, do we ever look at that, or do you ever look at that?
Sure. And what we do is we compare it to the average for Orange County Fire. We can obviously very easily compare it to other cities that we serve. Those numbers of 60-second get-out time, the 90-second turnout time, the 5-minute travel time are all national NFPA standards that we compare it to. So we don't just come up with these numbers. And even with the philosophy of some of the ideas on, is that really the right standard? It's not us coming up with standards. It's not Citygate recommending a random standard so that we can look like we're meeting our standards. So it is compared nationally throughout the county. We don't typically look at other specific fire departments that we don't control the stats on. I will be honest with you, and I'm sure you guys all know, you can kind of make the stats say what you want and what's your desire to do it. What I can do is I can control all the stats that we have and compare our different cities. What is San Clemente like versus Dana Point? That's all very easy, and I know that they're good, strong data that we have some control over, so we know the quality is where we want it. Like I said, the whole concept of that percentage or fractile is a much higher standard than just doing an average. And so that's one reason why we look at it. As you can see on here, our average looks good. So when we go to the residents next door to the fire station and we have a 20-second response time, that looks great for our averages, but not really painting the whole picture that we want to see. So we do compare it, and at times we've been asked by city councils to do direct comparisons to different areas. So there's depth that we can do when it comes to looking at stats. If we want more of a picture, it obviously takes some significant man hours to put in and make sure the data is accurate. But there is a ability to go deeper where there's a need.
Yeah, and as a layperson, and I've had people ask me about, do we have enough fire stations? And if you just look at raw data and we're always meeting the average, that doesn't necessarily mean that we might not need, another station or another response or another something. So I just want, and having you here is great, because I can't even imagine going over these things without you here. It would, it would be not that beneficial. So I really appreciate you being here and answering these questions. I think as we go forward, if there is deployment issues or whatever we can address, we'll be able to address them directly with you. I think get a lot of questions answered sooner than later. So thanks for making it so clear. Like I said, I know nothing about fire stuff, and it's really, you're doing a good job of making it understandable for me.
Good.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I guess as Adam was pointing out, this document, this annual budget's like 4 inches thick with everything. So how much you put in there before you get overloaded? Well, but it's got to be there to say how good of a job are we doing, right?
Right. I agree.
Good.
And one little question for Adam: are these all the info that you sent us with police and fire, with the response times and crimes and all that? Is that public record?
Yes, this is public record as reported through the budget process every year. These numbers can be found on the city's website. At the very top of the page is a link that says transparency, city transparency. If you click on that, all of the budget documents, I believe from the last 10 years or so, are listed in there. You'd have to go through the table of contents for each budget to figure out where the performance measures are, but that section of the budget document covers performance measures not only from public safety services, but from basically all divisions of the city as well.
Oh, okay, so we can share these numbers with other entities when doing research or whatever.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to understand the numbers in the police part of it a little more before I share it. I noticed it says there's like 31,000 calls for service, but then you go to priority one, or is priority one and part one the same thing? Nick, do you know that?
Well, priority one would be the response, but part one crimes are the big ones.
Well,
where's your priority one?
well, it says on the one performance measures on workload outputs. It says
Right.
number of emergency calls received. Priority one, it says 303.
Right.
Right, and then it says number of traffic collision reports, and it says 809.
Right.
And I believe those are part one crimes, those two, because it adds up to about 1,100 a year. Then,
Well, wait a minute. But I'm looking at the numbers too. You're talking about collision reports being part one crimes?
I'm trying to determine that what's part one and what's part two.
Well, the way I read this thing is the number of emergency calls received. That's like priority one. That's red light and siren, emergency calls.
And which ones do you think is that?
I'm sorry?
And how many alarms a year or responses are those?
Well, the 303 in 1819 is what's reported here.
Well, no, emergency call received priority one in 1819 was, I have 272.
Are we talking about the police services or?
Yeah, I am. That's what I'm looking at.
Whoa. Down at the bottom where it says page number, what's the number?
Oh, let me see here.
I'm on 2018 and 19 actual.
Yeah.
2018-19 actual. Total number of calls for service is 31,000. Is that the one?
Yeah.
31,000? Okay, all right. I got you. We're on the same one now.
Okay, so these are all independent of each other. Number of calls for services is different than the number of emergency calls received.
Right.
Okay, and then you get down to the Part 1 crimes, which is completely different. That's usually comes from the FBI stats, and the Part 1 crimes are rape, robbery, murder. The big ones. Okay.
Yeah, anything where physical harm can come are usually Part 1, and Part 2 is usually property crimes. I think generally.
Okay.
But where government can kind of and the law enforcement gets into problems is when the Part 1 crimes goes really high. There's something going on that they're not responding to the need, and that's where that performance is good. Now, that leads me to the next one. But see, Manhart's not here, so I can't ask him. But I just as an example, look at 2017-18 actual. Go to the same Part 1 crime.
Yeah.
14.07 compared to 1.39. The disparity is so large, that it requires an explanation. What happened?
This is per 1,000 in population is what you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. But you compare apples to apples on the thing.
So you're comparing the 14 and change in 2018 to the 2018-19 actual. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
So they've gone up basically over roughly 3.5%, or 3.5 more per thousand population.
No.
No?
When it went down, it went from 14.07 per thousand crimes.
Yeah.
Crimes. It went down to 1.39 per thousand the next year.
Well, they got the decimal points wrong on that.
They had one hell of a lot of, ran the bad guys out of town or something. I don't know.
I guess that's a question for Ed.
Yeah, so that's the reason why I'm asking this thing about the numbers. Where do we get these numbers from? Because I got to make some sense out of this thing. And right now, without knowing this stuff, there's an explanation. It's just I can't see it from the numbers here, and that's all I'm saying.
I guess we got to move this to the next meeting then to ask Ed about that.
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
Can you just clarify one thing for me, Nick? Because I'm looking at the performance measures for police services, and I see the number of Part 1 crimes for 2017 actual. I have, like you do, 14.07. But then I go to the next line, 2018-19 projected, I have 17.40.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
No?
Look at it as a separate page, and then you look at the bottom, it's page 286.
Oh, okay. I'm on 296 or something here.
Right. That one's 296 is the 17-18 actual. I want you to look at 18-19 actual, 1 year later.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Now I see it. Oh.
It's
Well,
such a dramatic difference.
Just to,
yeah. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
That's what I'm saying. Is
Yeah.
why these numbers are like this? You got to start from a foundation, and then you start working from there. And I can't make these explanations without somebody helping me. And that's
just to clarify, Part 1 crimes are murder, manslaughter, sex offenses, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, motor vehicle theft, and arson. Additionally, non-Part 1 crimes reportable with a hate crime bias are larceny, theft, simple assault, intimidation, and vandalism, destruction of property.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those are, that's all figured out by the Department of Justice and the FBI. They're the ones that classify crimes. Individual departments don't do that.
Right. I'm just saying that's when you're saying what's a Part 1 crime, that's what they are.
Yeah.
Chairman, if I could, I'd like to present an option for the committee to consider at this point. That being that, in light of the wonderful presentation that Chief Capobianco just did related to the OCFA numbers, it may behoove the committee to simply table this discussion to the next meeting, keeping the data as it is, and I'll just talk to Chief Manhart and ask him to watch this meeting, ensure that he does, so that he's aware of what the committee is looking for in terms of information that they would like to gather about the OCSD's numbers, similar to the way that the fire chief was able to explain those numbers. And I would recommend this also because Marine Safety has their performance measures included in this item, and at the next meeting, I anticipate having Interim Chief Rod Malott with us, and he can also discuss those. And I will contact him and make sure that he's provided a link to watch this video as well.
I think that's quite acceptable because we're handicapped without the inside knowledge of what's going on with this thing, and I'd like to understand it myself so I can explain it to the citizens and/or the city council if I can.
Yes, and furthermore, at the next meeting, by that point, the council will have reviewed the committee's work plan, and we'll have much more solid direction from the council about moving forward with performance measure reviews, assuming they're either going to approve or make alterations to this particular work plan project. We'll know what that is, I believe, by the next meetings. So if the committee would like to do that, we can probably be best to get a motion, a second, and a roll call on that. But I don't want to stop the committee from further discussing this.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere. Good. Anyone care to make a motion on that? Therefore, I will move that we put this discussion for public safety performance measures to the next meeting, table it from this one to the next one. Second. Roll call, please. Adam, can you help us out with that?
One point of clarification: who was the second? Who seconded them?
I was. Janice?
Thank you. Okay, Chair Bercuda,
Aye.
Vice Chair Janis,
Aye.
Committee Member Leffler,
All
and Committee Member Walsh.
Aye.
Okay, that passes 4-0. I will move this item to the next agenda, maintaining the documents as they are. And Chair Bercuda, would you continue the agenda? We're on item 8B at this point.
Well, let's hold on a second. Now, do we on reviews and recommendations? Is that the time we do asking for agenda items for next meeting, or is it under 8?
The committee can make those requests with a vote. Honestly, at many points in the meeting, it's been done. It's been done in this section because the agendized items relate to the reviews and recommendations. But if somebody has a report about something later on in the meeting, they could bring it up at that point, and the committee could discuss it. So it's up to you.
All right. Here's what I want. The last meeting, we tried to agendize a e-bike presentation from Chief of Police, and obviously that's not available. I'd like to keep that on agenda because at last night's city council meeting, they're asking for the same thing. They're trying to figure out where we are with e-bikes. So I suspect they're going to be asking us and Chief Manhart and probably staff to come up with some ideas and answers on the thing. So I'd like to be considered
Nick, could I add something to that?
here.
Yeah, after our last meeting, I contacted Chief Manhart and we discussed the e-bike situation since so many citizens were complaining about it. And he said that he certainly couldn't deploy any deputies specifically to patrol for e-bikes, but that he would commit to making it a priority in patrol, that when they saw issues with e-bikes or kids without helmets, that they would make contact. Sheriff Barnes did write a letter. I don't know if you saw that. It was published and to the city, and it was published on Facebook, that committed to more patrol proaction in e-bike and bike safety and pedestrian safety. And so it's been addressed to some extent anyway, in that way. So if Chief Manhart was here, he could elaborate, but Chief Barnes did write a letter to the city saying that they were committed to addressing some safety issues here.
Well, that's important because the city council has, brought it up as a action item for them last night, and I went, "Uh-oh, here we go," because it's getting a hotter action altogether, and we got to figure out what the problem is, and then any suggestions from our committee to the city council probably be listened to. But I don't want to be behind the curve on it either.
Chair, this is Rob Capobianco. I have something to add if that's okay.
Please.
I did a little bit of research on e-bikes from the EMS and the OCFA response side of things. We do not specifically track e-bikes, but what I did was I looked at all the bike down, all the bicycle accidents that we responded to in the city for 2000. Once again, this was a very cursory search. I just wanted to kind of get some background information on it. Of the 25 bike accidents that we responded to in the year of 2020, 3 of them were had in the comments mentioned e-bike. So that is by no means necessarily including all e-bike accidents. It's just those are the ones that I could find since we don't specifically track e-bikes. So in 2020, we've been to 3 of them. 2 of them were transported to the hospital as trauma patients, advanced life support. 1 was transported basic life support. So a fairly small number. I did also check in with some of the fire stations to see if they've been seeing incidents that we get called out for. And it sounds like the number that have actually made it to 911 for the fire department is fairly low. Their response and their reaction to my question was similar to some of the stats that I've seen. So at least at this point, is not translating to a significant volume, a call volume for us. And once again, that's just a superficial, cursory kind of look into some of the call volumes that I've gone through. And by no means is that a official count, but hopefully that helps as you guys move forward.
Thank you. It certainly helps. What was explained to me by empirical data is that since the COVID thing, e-bike sales and the use of them has just exploded. So all this stuff is relevant, but it's so recent that we have nothing to compare against necessarily because all these things are around. Plus, there's a lot of juveniles that are running around with these things, and that's the concern is pedestrians and things. So, got to get a handle on where we stand on that.
And that number I throw out to you is only ones that rose to the level of calling 911 and having paramedics come. It does not by any means include all e-bike accidents, minor accidents, non-injury accidents. We don't track, nor do we respond to those. So that is just ones where 911 is called significant injury, transport to the hospital. I don't have any information on minor accidents and ones that don't get transported.
I think the majority of the correspondence that the council's getting, and I've got emails, is mostly the concern over the juveniles racing around, and the concern that there's going to be maybe some health and safety issues in the future if it continues. I don't think it's so much that they're seeing accidents, but I think it's the potential for accidents. And apparently they're riding e-bikes on the beach trail at 25 miles an hour. So I think it's the concern for potential.
Right, and we'd rather prevent this stuff than have to report an accident in the future. So,
and what I'll do is I'll get a copy and I'll email you guys a copy of Sheriff Barnes' letter if you haven't seen it. So I can take a look and kind of get an idea what his response was to some of this also. That will help us move forward also.
great, I appreciate that. Thank you, Rick.
And Chair Mercuda, just to make the committee aware, this item was requested by the committee and voted on, and the staff has received direction to place this on an agenda. In speaking with Lieutenant Manhart, he was not able to put this presentation together for this meeting, so it's already on the agenda for the following meeting. So no vote needs to be taken at this point.
Okay, we just have to do our background on the thing and see if we can make of course, the chief's going to help us out with that, with the laws, regulations, and what he's seen so far in traffic. Good. Okay. Now, so we don't have to do any motions on it because it's already agendized, right?
That's correct.
Okay, we're good there. All right, next item of business. We talked about the marine safety situation already, haven't we?
Yes, I believe we are on item 8B,
B, right.
determination of the next Public Safety Committee special meeting date and time.
Yep. Okay. Are we still, the presentation to the city council still for the 20th?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So we should have a report back following that. All right.
And just to refresh the committee's memory on this, there was a request to include with the work plan a separate request to convert the committee from ad hoc to a regular committee. So if that's approved by the council, then we wouldn't need to do a special meeting after the next meeting. But for this, since this is not a regular committee, I just want to cover all of our bases and let's plan for the next meeting as a special meeting.
Right. And at that point, if the city council approves it being a regular committee, then we can choose a particular date that works for all of us, right?
That's correct, yes.
Right. Yeah, it works for the city too. Any good or bad? Stay away from a calendar. As far as a date, what do you recommend there, Adam?
Looking on the calendar, some days that work better than others in the earlier part of November would be November 10th is wide open. November 12th could work at 3 p.m. I think Wednesdays there tend to be some conflicting meetings, but those two days work well, and they would give staff, if there's any direction from the council, it would give us some time to prep the next public safety committee meeting appropriately. So I don't want to have the next meeting too soon after the council meeting.
Okay. Wednesday, the 11th of November is out because that's a city holiday. Called Veterans Day.
What holiday is that?
Veterans Day.
Not Memorial Day, this is Veterans Day.
Does the city go dark on a Wednesday?
You know, that's a very good question. I've never
had that.
Yeah, it's usually a Monday affair, so that's really good point.
I thought Wednesday
Not
was
sure, but either way, if the Wednesdays seem to be conflicting, so let's just stay away from Wednesdays for reasons.
Hey, Adam, this is Rob. I'm going to make it difficult. Thursdays are really my only standing meeting where our whole ops department gets together. That's Thursday afternoons starting at 1 o'clock. Other than that, you pick any time and any day, and I can probably make it work.
All right, let's look at November 10th. Any problems with that?
Is that a Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Yeah,
Tuesday's
that's fine.
Anybody have a problem? That works good too. Now, choose the day. Now, what time would staff recommend, afternoon or morning for this? What else is going on in the city?
The entire day is open. Since there's a possibility that the city offices are not actually closed on a Wednesday, we would otherwise probably have that on a Monday, being the 9th. So for the 10th, if there's some prep that we need to do before the meeting, the later in the day, the better. So 3 p.m. Would be my recommendation.
3 p.m. always works for me.
Okay. Do that, 3:00. Okay, now the reason why I said the 11th was a holiday is because I've got the city's calendar and it indicates that. Right there.
It shows it on the Wednesday then?
Right there on a Wednesday on November 11th.
Well, the
Okay.
city clerk put that together, so I trust that as fact.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm just reporting what I found.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So let's see. So we're going to go for 3 o'clock, 3 p.m. on 11/10. Okay, good. All right, there. Hopefully, we can get the other committee member and the proposed committee member to help us out, and that's a good date too.
And I've spoken with Interim Chief Malott, and he's indicated that he should be able to make any of those times work. However, can we get a motion in a second, and I'll do a roll call on the determination of that date?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we have the special Public Safety Committee special meeting date. I'm set as 3 p.m. on Tuesday, November 10th, 2020. And that will be another Zoom meeting.
I believe so, but we can leave it open for the time being and make the determination of the specific location when we announce the meeting.
I'll second that, hoping that we can meet in person somewhere.
Well, the city council talked about that last night too, so, yeah, okay.
Yeah, where did that go?
Table to the next meeting,
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay, so I will take care of the roll call if that's
please.
acceptable. All right, Chair Bercuda.
Aye.
Vice Chair Janis.
Aye.
Committee Member Leffler.
Aye.
And Committee Member Walsh.
Hi.
Good.
Okay, that passes 4-0.
All right. We have any unfinished business that we need to attend to?
There is none.
There is none at this point. Got it. Okay, now reports of committee members and staff is the next one. 10A, Police Services. He's not available to give us much. Did he leave anything for you, staff? Did the Chief of Police leave anything for bringing up with you for this meeting?
If Chief Capobianco has anything to report, he can take this time.
Okay.
Thank you for your time. A little update since our last meeting. We've had a couple of incidents. We continue to be very active with the statewide mutual aid system. As of today, a lot of our resources have come back, which was nice before our last kind of heat spell. We do have one Type 3 strike team, that's the brush fire engines, that is up at the glass fire up in the Napa area. We have about 10 to 15 overhead. So that's in the ICS, kind of the command and control piece. Over the last month, I did have the opportunity to go out. The position that I'm a trainee in as a liaison. Interesting enough, it's a lot like the job I do here, and learned a ton at it. As we have the opportunity to send people out, it's a huge value to that. And the fire that I was on is right underneath Yosemite, so I was trying to figure out and liaise between 5 different counties, two forests, the Sierra as well as the Inyo. The fire was, we were working with the city of Mammoth and their EOC as there was some potential going up there. A state park, cattle ranchers, beehive owners, private property owners. So the experience that we get when we go to something like that is invaluable, and then we bring that back and bring that to what we do. So that's a little bit about the mutual aid piece of it. A little more locally, things are kind of business as usual. We did have a situation about a week ago where we went down and assisted. Camp Pendleton had a structure fire, so we helped them. Our upstaffing that we did last weekend in support of what Orange County Sheriff, we went into unified command with them. They had a great organizational structure set up, a very professional IEP set up in preparation for it. I'll let Ed speak to the number of deputies and the resources he had. What we did was we had our 3 paramedic units coordinated with care ambulance, and then we also brought in a task force and staged them up at the high school in case that was necessary. And the task force we put together has a battalion chief with 2 fire engines and a truck company. We put on paper 3 additional task forces in case the need went. So I think we had a good plan in place and worked very well with the sheriffs and including us with that. As far as looking forward, this is the time of year that we start to see our kind of weak low pressures come through. I know there's some talk of the chance of scattered showers Friday, Saturday, but what that means to us is usually what follows these weak low pressures to where we don't get rain is wind events. And there's some early talk. It's a little too early to predict it, but there's some talk of some offshore winds Monday, Tuesday. No discussion on the strength yet and if they'll actually hit the coast. We've been lucky up to this point where these offshore events have not hit the coast. So fingers crossed that we don't see an issue with that. But we are watching it, and like always, we up staff and prepare ahead of those wind events, but we are watching for it. And that's really all I have, unless you have any other questions for me today.
Chief, I've got one. Any thoughts or how do you feel about the new helicopter?
Well, I watched a water drop. Obviously, I've been watching them my whole career, but I watched that thing drop water. And the difference between 350 gallons and 3,000 gallons is incredible to actually see in person. So having a Type 1 resource located here, and once again, it is an Edison airship, Edison funded, so it's not an additional cost to us or our members, but it's accessible for us in case we need it. It's a bigger helicopter than we had last year. Like I said, 3,000 gallons is incredible. And if you actually go on our website, there's a video comparing. It's a side-by-side of our helicopter dropping and their helicopter dropping. And the water is going to be a great resource. And what we did, it is Edison, and I know San Clemente is not an Edison area, but it's something that will be on a initial response, and no additional cost to the city of San Clemente. It will be on an initial response to the areas back behind San Clemente and in San Clemente itself, and it will be on our dispatch, not waiting for us to get on scene to figure out where it is. So it will be a resource within San Clemente as well. The other thing we have, which we talked a lot about last year, SDG&E has one of the Sky Cranes, another Type 1 large helicopter, available for their areas. The response time is a little bit more. It's coming all the way down from close to the border. I want Brownsfield. It's coming from pretty far away, but it's just another big helicopter and a big resource by our power companies as they continue to engage with us. So I think it's great. And now the reality of it is a great resource. It's located at LoSal. It's here in the county, but it does cover all of Southern California Edison's area. So there's a chance that it could be on other fires as well. But if it's here in county, it's a resource that will engage early. So it's a huge benefit to us. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. I didn't want to, that's significant change in resources for you. That's
Absolutely.
good news there. Okay. Did you have a response down in South San Clemente to a residence down there in the Cotton Estates area the last couple of days?
A response for a medical aid or a fire? Or
I think a fire aid, I think.
I'm not aware of it. I know we haven't had a significant fire down there. If we have a response where nothing's found, I'm not always told about it.
Oh, okay.
But we have not had an active fire in the Cottons area in the last few weeks.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. How about next? I guess it looks like committee chairs going to say something, right, staff?
I have something to report.
My turn. Okay. I've had a couple of contacts since our last meeting, and I just want to report on those. I talked to a fellow named Peter Jimenez, who is the Emergency Communications Coordinator for OCSD, the Sheriff's Department Communications. My interest in that is because of one of our work plans called Communications and Disaster Preparedness. He gave me a short rundown of how the communications work in the county, and it's quite significant. They have 18,000 different pieces of equipment, both mobile and portable, and they take care of the sheriff, the fire, everybody in the county, it seems. And at some point, I'll probably ask him for a presentation. He'd love to do that. But it shows that the preparedness they've got is pretty significant on that. The second contact I made was with Stephen Foster, who's the San Clemente Emergency Preparedness Coordinator. And because of the same work plan, and he's very interested in helping us out too. He's got his work cut out for him because of there's so many facets of the emergency preparedness end of it, and so he is interested in making a presentation at some future time too. So I just add that out there. So there's a lot going on, and we can, as individuals, contact these folks and come back and start coordinating how we're going to do these work plans get the information we need to do our job. That's the end of mine.
Can I add something real quick? At the council meeting last night, the Human Affairs Committee got their work plan looked at and approved. And part of that, Council Member Ward was interested in their homeless portion of their work plan. And Chairman Cole reminded them that they have now a subcommittee that Gary and I are on, and kind of passed it off onto us as the fact that our work plan is being put together. And Councilmember Ward was concerned that that the homeless work plan might not reflect what the council's idea and the city was prioritizing. And Councilmember James was very supportive and jumped in and said that he'd looked at the work plan and he thought that they were going to be very impressed with the all-encompassing nature of it. I bring this up because I think we need to remember, and I think our work plan for public safety, I think it's broad enough where I don't think that there's not anything we couldn't address. But we do need to remember that even, we talked about prioritizing things, that our first responsibility is to make sure that we are well aware of what the council's priorities are, and I know we've been working hard, and I forget it sometimes because I think we've got really, really good ideas, but we do have to remember that the council is probably going to have some major input as to how we prioritize what we do. And again, with that being said, I don't think that there's anything that we didn't address on that work plan that we would, not be able to make the council happy. And a second thing I was going to ask Adam is, I'd like to have some conversations. Joe and I are on a subcommittee that we worked on the work plan, the neighborhood, citywide neighborhood watch. And even though the plan hasn't been approved by the city council in anticipation, would it be appropriate if Joe and I had a couple of meetings and discussed some things, some strategies, so we could hit the ground running when things, come together?
Yes, the committee members can meet in non-quorum groups, which would be for this committee a maximum of 2. If you want to preemptively work on some strategies based on the anticipated approval of a work plan project, that you would not be, there would be no Brown Act violations there. I would just remind you, keep those discussions to a maximum of 2 members of the committee, but I don't see any issues with that.
Okay, that's all I have.
Good. Any other committee members' comments?
No.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion that we adjourn this.
Before, I'm sorry, I have something to report before we move on.
Yeah, got to make sure that the staff is happy.
I thought he was happy.
I'm last and least.
Yeah.
In this case. So this is related to the report that Chairman Bercuda discussed related to the informational presentations from various representatives from public safety agencies and both external and internal. So what I would like to report on is a plan moving forward with incorporating that those types of informational presentations into the committee's regular meetings. My plan is that after the council reviews the Public Safety Committee's work plan and we have the direction to move forward with this particular item, which is part of our informational gathering project, that I would come back to the committee at the next meeting with an agendized item for the committee's consideration that would lay out essentially a plan for the types of personnel and the schedule of presentations based on staff availability, resources, and those kinds of things to come to the committee over the next year or so. And it's not going to be, the exact staff on the exact date that they would come, but just an overview of the plan for those kinds of informational presentations. And then the committee can provide feedback on that plan. And, once we have the work plan project approved, that's the council direction to move forward with this. So, once after the October 20th meeting, that's one of those things that I'll be putting together for the next meeting. So I wanted to report on that, and that was it.
It's a great idea because not only is it informing the committee, but it informs the public. They can look back at saying, oh, that's what marine safety does, or hey, that's what it does. So that's an excellent idea of getting those presentations kind of agendized, booked, and whatever. Good, thank you.
Okay. And committee member Leffler, sorry to cut you off. I will let you make your motion.
No, it's just my battery was almost dead. I wouldn't plugged in now, so if you guys, anybody wants to go ahead and talk some more, please.
He just drops off.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we adjourn this meeting until our next scheduled public safety meeting on November 10th at 3 p.m.
Second.
Aye.
Chair Computer,
Aye.
Vice Chair Janis,
Aye.
Committee member Leffler,
Aye.
and Committee member Walsh.
Aye.
All right. Thank you all for a wonderful meeting.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.
Good job, guys.